In an unexpected and unprecedented move, China has delivered a stern ultimatum to its strategic partner, Russia: stop escalating nuclear threats or face serious consequences. This bold stance from Beijing has sent shockwaves through the international community, sparking intense debate over what it means for the once solid alliance between these two global powers. Could this signal the beginning of a major rift in the China-Russia partnership, or is it a calculated strategy to project strength on the world stage? More importantly, how might this confrontation reshape the fragile balance of global security? Let us dive into the details of China's warning and explore the implications of this dramatic geopolitical turn. Chinese President Xi Jinping has taken an unprecedented step in directly addressing Russia's nuclear rhetoric, marking a significant shift in Beijing's diplomatic approach. During a meeting with German Chancellor Olaf Scholz, Xi made his most direct criticism of Vladimir Putin's nuclear posturing, emphasizing that nuclear weapons cannot be used in the ongoing conflict. The warning delivered by the Chinese leader encompassed several critical aspects, reflecting a firm stance on nuclear issues that diverges from Beijing's traditionally reserved approach to Russian military actions. First and foremost, it underscored a strong opposition to the use or threats of nuclear weapons, emphasizing the severe consequences such actions could have for global peace and stability. Additionally, it advocated firmly against the possibility of nuclear warfare, highlighting the catastrophic humanitarian and environmental impacts such a conflict would entail. The statement also included a call for proactive measures to prevent a nuclear crisis from unfolding in Europe or Asia, regions already grappling with significant geopolitical tensions. Furthermore, it stressed the necessity of preserving the global strategic balance, urging all nations to work together to ensure that no single power could destabilize the delicate equilibrium. In a move that marked a significant shift, Xi Jinping's remarks, as reported by China's state news agency Xinhua, urged the international community to jointly oppose the use of, or threats to use, nuclear weapons. This explicit language and direct appeal stand in stark contrast to China's historically cautious and non-confrontational posture on matters involving Russian military initiatives, signaling a potential recalibration of its diplomatic strategy. The timing of China's warning coincides with Putin's announcement about Russia's strategic nuclear forces being in a state of full readiness. China's Foreign Ministry spokesperson Mao Ning referenced the January 2022 joint statement by nuclear weapon states, reminding that a nuclear war cannot be won and must never be fought. China's position has evolved significantly as the Pentagon reports that Beijing has expanded its nuclear capabilities, with estimates suggesting China could field approximately 1,500 warheads by 2035. This context makes the warning to Russia particularly noteworthy. The international community has responded with measured optimism to China's stance. The White House, the UK, and the European Union have aligned with China's position against nuclear threats, collectively condemning Putin's nuclear decree as irresponsible. French President Emmanuel Macron has specifically requested Xi to use all his influence with Putin to achieve de-escalation. Western diplomatic sources indicate that Xi's warning carries particular weight given China's position as Russia's most powerful ally. The Financial Times reports that this intervention demonstrates Xi has placed clear limits on the extent of his support for Putin. NATO members have noted this development while maintaining their assessment of China as a decisive enabler of Russia's military capabilities. Russia's recent modifications to its nuclear doctrine have significantly altered the landscape of global security. In November 2024, the Kremlin unveiled substantial changes to its nuclear use policy, marking a dramatic shift from its previous stance focused solely on existential threats to the state. Recent adjustments to Russia's nuclear doctrine have introduced profound changes, reflecting a significant shift in its strategic approach to nuclear weapons use. Among the most notable updates is the expanded authorization for a nuclear response in scenarios where weapons of mass destruction are employed against Russian forces, even if such attacks occur beyond Russia's borders. This change effectively broadens the scope of situations that could trigger a nuclear retaliation, moving beyond the confines of direct attacks on Russian soil. Another critical development is Belarus's integration under Russia's nuclear umbrella, a move that deepens the alliance between Moscow and Minsk while extending Russia's nuclear deterrence's geographical reach. This step not only cements Belarus's role as a key strategic partner but also underscores Moscow's intention to project its nuclear capabilities further into Europe. Additionally, the revised doctrine introduces a new interpretation of attacks by non-nuclear states, particularly those backed by nuclear-armed powers. Such scenarios are now treated as joint attacks, implying that Russia reserves the right to respond as if the nuclear power itself had participated directly. This perspective adds a layer of complexity to conflicts involving alliances and proxy engagements, blurring the lines between direct and indirect aggression. Furthermore, the doctrine has expanded the range of launch on warning scenarios to include a broader array of aerial platforms, signaling an increased readiness to respond preemptively to perceived threats. This adjustment demonstrates Russia's intent to adapt to evolving technological and tactical realities in modern warfare. Collectively, these changes significantly lower the threshold for the use of nuclear weapons. The previous standard, which required an existential threat to the state to justify nuclear deployment, has been replaced with broader conditions that encompass threats to sovereignty and territorial integrity. This shift reflects a more assertive and flexible nuclear posture, heightening global concerns about the potential for escalation in an already volatile geopolitical environment. Putin's nuclear messaging has become increasingly assertive since the invasion of Ukraine. In February 2022, he placed Russia's nuclear forces on high combat alert. The Russian leader has repeatedly emphasized the country's nuclear capabilities, with the Kremlin spokesman Dmitry Peskov confirming that Ukrainian strikes with U.S.-supplied weapons could potentially trigger a nuclear response. Russia's military losses have been substantial, with an estimated 125,800 casualties between September and November 2024, resulting in gains of just over 2,000 square kilometers, approximately 53 casualties per square kilometer gained. The conflict has evolved significantly since its inception, with Russian forces making slow but steady territorial advances in eastern Ukraine. In early May 2024, Russian forces launched a significant ground assault north of Kharkiv, seizing several villages. The situation at the Zaporizhzhia nuclear plant remains particularly concerning, with the International Atomic Energy Agency calling for a nuclear safety and security protection zone around the facility. The Russian military strategy has shifted to focus on gradual advances, particularly in Donetsk Oblast, where Putin has prioritized offensive operations despite significant personnel losses. The UK's Chief of Defence Staff reports that more than 1,500 Russian soldiers were being killed or wounded daily in October, marking the highest casualty rate since the war's beginning. The economic relationship between China and Russia is under intense scrutiny as escalating nuclear tensions cast a shadow over their strategic partnership. Trade between the two nations has soared to unprecedented levels, reaching an impressive $230 billion in the previous year alone. This burgeoning economic exchange underscores the depth of their ties, making the partnership too vital for either side to jeopardize without significant consequences. China's position as Russia's foremost economic ally has grown increasingly nuanced and multifaceted. The collaboration spans a wide range of sectors, including strategic energy partnerships that bolster Russia's fossil fuel exports, large-scale infrastructure development projects that facilitate mutual growth, and critical technology transfers that enhance both nations' technological capabilities. Furthermore, their military-industrial cooperation highlights the strategic depth of the alliance, with shared initiatives designed to bolster their defense capacities in the face of Western opposition. Despite these extensive economic ties, China has carefully cultivated the image of a neutral party in the ongoing Ukraine conflict. Beijing consistently emphasizes diplomatic solutions and abstains from overtly supporting Russia's military actions, all while continuing to strengthen economic ties with Moscow. This delicate balancing act has drawn criticism from NATO, with the alliance branding China a decisive enabler of the conflict. Such accusations point to the complexities of China's role simultaneously presenting itself as a mediator on the global stage while maintaining an economic partnership that indirectly supports Russia's resilience amid sanctions and isolation. The stakes are extraordinarily high for Beijing. A disruption in its trade relationship with Moscow could have far-reaching consequences, not only for their bilateral economic interests, but also for China's broader geopolitical strategy. As nuclear tensions escalate, the challenge for Beijing lies in managing its economic dependence on Russia without alienating other critical international partners or inviting further scrutiny from the West. The fuel and energy complex remains the cornerstone of China-Russia economic cooperation. Recent developments include joint infrastructure projects and increasing equipment supplies. However, China has demonstrated strategic caution in its energy relationship with Russia, particularly in natural gas dependency. Chinese Vice Premier Deng Shuxian's attendance at the 6th China-Russia Energy Business Forum highlighted three key areas of cooperation: advanced energy trade and investment, industry chain integration, and multilateral platform coordination. The escalating tensions have triggered significant reactions in global financial markets. Investors have sought refuge in safe haven assets, with gold prices rising 0.8% as markets responded to nuclear rhetoric. Treasury prices increased while yields declined, reflecting investor movement away from risk assets. The economic implications extend beyond bilateral relations. Countries in the global south, particularly low to middle-income nations, face increased hardship due to higher fuel, fertilizer, and food costs. This economic pressure has led many nations to reassess their international partnerships and trade relationships. China's careful economic positioning reflects a broader strategy of maintaining influence while minimizing exposure to geopolitical risks. The country has effectively increased its economic presence globally through trade, finance, and investment, while simultaneously managing its strategic partnership with Russia to maintain leverage in the relationship. Beijing's diplomatic maneuvering has taken center stage as tensions escalate over nuclear threats in Eastern Europe. The Chinese government has positioned itself as a potential mediator while carefully managing its relationships with both Moscow and Western powers. Chinese President Xi Jinping has taken a notable step in showcasing Beijing's diplomatic ambitions by appointing a special envoy to Ukraine and other nations to explore potential political resolutions to the ongoing conflict. The envoy, a seasoned diplomat and former Chinese ambassador to Russia, marks the most significant intervention by China in the Ukraine war, signaling a desire to play a more active role on the global stage. This move reflects Beijing's evolving approach to international crises, positioning itself as a mediator in a conflict that has drawn worldwide attention. China's peace efforts have been multifaceted, reflecting its intent to project an image of responsibility and impartiality. One of its most prominent initiatives is a proposed 12-point peace plan for Ukraine, which outlines steps to de-escalate hostilities and restore stability. In addition, Beijing has engaged in hosting bilateral discussions with key stakeholders, seeking to foster dialogue and build trust between conflicting parties. Through multilateral forums, China has consistently called for a negotiated settlement and emphasized the need for diplomatic solutions. Furthermore, it has voiced support for grain export initiatives, recognizing the broader global impact of disrupted supply chains stemming from the war. Despite these efforts, Beijing's attempts at mediation have encountered significant obstacles. Lai Hui, the appointed envoy, declined to participate in the third Ukrainian Peace Summit held in Malta, a decision that has drawn criticism and raised questions about the extent of China's commitment to a comprehensive peace process. The absence of Chinese representation at such a critical event highlights the challenges Beijing faces in balancing its diplomatic engagement with its strategic interests and maintaining its delicate stance as a neutral actor. China's involvement in the conflict underscores its ambitions to assert itself as a key player in international diplomacy. However, its efforts continue to be met with skepticism, particularly from Western nations, who question Beijing's alignment with Russia and its ability to act as an unbiased mediator. The road ahead for China's peace initiatives remains fraught with complexity as it navigates the competing demands of maintaining its strategic partnerships, addressing global concerns, and achieving tangible progress in conflict resolution. China's diplomatic strategy reflects a complex balancing act between maintaining its partnership with Russia and preventing isolation from Western economies. Beijing has adopted a careful approach to avoid Western sanctions while preserving its strategic relationship with Moscow. The relationship with European powers has become particularly delicate as China seeks to maintain crucial trading partnerships while managing international pressure. Chinese diplomats have emphasized their role in restraining nuclear escalation, using this position to reassure European partners. Regional stability has emerged as a critical concern for Chinese leadership, particularly regarding the risk of nuclear escalation. Beijing has urged calm and restraint in response to Putin's nuclear threats, demonstrating its growing unease with Moscow's aggressive posturing. The Chinese Foreign Ministry has consistently emphasized the need for dialogue and consultation to ease tensions. This stance reflects Beijing's broader strategy of presenting itself as a responsible global power while protecting its strategic interests in both European and Asian theaters. China's diplomatic position has evolved significantly since the conflict's beginning, as evidenced by its increased engagement in peace initiatives. While maintaining its strategic partnership with Russia, Beijing is willing to exercise its diplomatic influence when nuclear threats risk destabilizing the international order. The effectiveness of China's diplomatic balancing act remains uncertain, as Western powers continue to view Beijing's position with skepticism. NATO members have characterized China as a decisive enabler of Russia's military capabilities, even as Beijing attempts to position itself as a neutral mediator in the conflict. The complex relationship between China and Russia spans centuries, marked by periods of both intense cooperation and strategic rivalry. Their shared border of 2,600 miles, 4,184 kilometers, has been a source of historical tension and territorial disputes. The Sino-Soviet relationship underwent profound turbulence during the Cold War, marked by ideological and geopolitical clashes that reshaped the global balance of power. In the mid-1950s, the alliance between the two communist powers began to fracture under the leadership of Soviet Premier Nikita Khrushchev. His policies of de-Stalinization and peaceful coexistence with the West starkly contrasted with the revolutionary fervor of Mao Zedong, who viewed Khrushchev's approach as a betrayal of Marxist-Leninist principles. This ideological schism deepened as each nation vied for leadership of the global communist movement, sowing distrust and animosity. Tensions escalated into open conflict in 1969 with a violent military confrontation at Xinbao Island, a disputed territory along their shared border. This clash was not an isolated incident but part of a broader pattern of border disputes that had long simmered between the two nations. Both sides stationed large numbers of troops along their frontier, creating a highly volatile situation that underscored the depth of their animosity. Beyond territorial disagreements, the Sino-Soviet split was fueled by competing visions for the direction of the communist bloc. The Soviet Union's emphasis on centralized control and global influence clashed with China's insistence on self-reliance and revolutionary orthodoxy. This divergence led to an intense rivalry, with both nations seeking to assert their dominance within the international communist movement, often at each other's expense. The deterioration of the Sino-Soviet relationship reached a point where Mao Zedong made a historic strategic pivot to counter the perceived Soviet threat. In a dramatic realignment of alliances, Mao pursued normalization of relations with the United States, an erstwhile adversary, to check Soviet influence in Asia. This bold move not only marked a turning point in Sino-American relations but also fundamentally altered the geopolitical landscape of the Cold War, creating a triangular dynamic between Washington, Moscow, and Beijing that continues to influence international politics to this day. The collapse of the Sino-Soviet alliance serves as a powerful reminder of how ideological differences and geopolitical competition can fracture even the most ostensibly aligned partnerships, reshaping global power structures in the process. The nuclear dimension of China-Russia relations has evolved significantly over decades. In the 1950s, the Soviet Union provided substantial atomic technology assistance to China through the Sino-Soviet Treaty of Friendship, Alliance, and Mutual Assistance. However, this cooperation ended abruptly with the Sino-Soviet split. Recent developments in nuclear cooperation have shown both promise and tension. In March 2023, China and Russia signed an agreement to deepen their nuclear energy cooperation, focusing on fast reactors and uranium, plutonium fuel production. However, this relationship has become increasingly competitive in the international nuclear energy market. The diplomatic relationship between Beijing and Moscow has been characterized by a series of interventions and reconciliations, evolving through distinct phases of cooperation and strategic alignment. A pivotal moment in this evolution came with the 1989 Sino-Soviet Summit, which marked the first meeting between the leaders of the two countries since the 1950s. This summit set the stage for a significant shift in relations, leading to the 1996 decision to elevate their partnership to a partnership of strategic coordination. Key milestones in this growing diplomatic bond include the signing of the 2001 Treaty of Good Neighborliness and Friendly Cooperation, which laid the foundation for closer ties in areas ranging from economic exchange to security collaboration. Another significant event came in 2004, when the two countries successfully resolved their long-standing border disputes, further strengthening their bilateral relationship. Most recently, in 2019, their partnership was upgraded once again, this time to a comprehensive strategic partnership of cooperation for a new era, reflecting the deepening of their ties and mutual interests in navigating the evolving global landscape. Despite current alignment, underlying tensions persist. Chinese officials and citizens maintain a level of distrust toward Russia, often motivated by historical grievances. The relationship faces ongoing challenges in Central Asia, where both powers compete for influence and resources. Additionally, Beijing's recent official map, claiming full sovereignty over Bolshoi-Ussuriysky Island, despite a 2005 agreement to split it equally, demonstrates that territorial disputes continue to simmer beneath the surface. The emergence of multiple nuclear-armed challengers has fundamentally altered the global security landscape, creating unprecedented challenges for international stability. The Pentagon reports that the United States and its allies will soon face two nuclear peer adversaries for the first time in the nuclear age. NATO has embarked on a comprehensive and far-reaching strategy to address the increasingly complex and volatile nuclear threat landscape posed by Russia. This effort represents the alliance's most significant reinforcement of collective defense measures in decades, reflecting the urgency of adapting to new geopolitical and security challenges. A cornerstone of NATO's response has been the bolstering of its forward deployments along the eastern flank, a critical region bordering Russia, where tensions remain high. By increasing troop presence and prepositioning military assets, NATO aims to strengthen its deterrence and reassure member states in Eastern Europe. Additionally, the alliance has focused on enhancing its rapid reinforcement capabilities, ensuring that it can swiftly mobilize forces and resources in response to any emerging threats. Modernization of nuclear deterrence infrastructure has also been prioritized, with NATO investing in advanced technologies and updated protocols to ensure the credibility and effectiveness of its nuclear arsenal. This modernization includes integrating newer delivery systems and reinforcing the strategic framework that underpins the alliance's deterrence posture. Alongside these efforts, NATO has expanded its focus to encompass comprehensive defense capabilities in the cyber and space domains, recognizing that future conflicts will likely extend beyond traditional battlefields. At the heart of NATO's strategy is the commitment to deterring Russian nuclear escalation, a challenge underscored by several critical factors. First, Russia's demonstrated willingness to take significant risks such as its aggressive military interventions and provocative nuclear rhetoric necessitates a robust and credible deterrent. Second, NATO remains acutely aware of the potential for Moscow to misinterpret perceived vulnerabilities within the alliance, which could embolden it to test NATO's resolve. Moreover, Russia's increasing reliance on its nuclear arsenal has grown in tandem with the depletion of its conventional military forces, a trend that raises the stakes for potential escalation. This reliance, coupled with the broader risk of opportunistic aggression during periods of conflict with other nuclear powers, underscores the need for NATO to maintain a strong and unified stance. By addressing these multifaceted challenges through a combination of forward deployments, rapid response enhancements, technological modernization, and strategic deterrence, NATO seeks to ensure the security and stability of its member states, while sending a clear message that it remains fully prepared to counter any threats to the international order. The security dynamics in Asia face mounting pressure as China rapidly expands its nuclear arsenal. Intelligence assessments indicate that Beijing could field over 1,000 operational warheads by 2030. This expansion is particularly concerning as it coincides with growing collaboration between nuclear-armed states. The situation in North Korea adds another layer of complexity, as continued improvement and diversification of its nuclear and ballistic missile capabilities present significant deterrence challenges. The emerging DPRK-Russia strategic partnership, which violates several UN Security Council resolutions, demonstrates the potential for collaboration between nuclear-armed adversaries. The threat of nuclear proliferation has grown more complex and dangerous, driven by a combination of geopolitical tensions and technological advancements. The Pentagon has highlighted a multiple nuclear challenger problem, underscoring the difficulty U.S. strategists face in addressing the unique threats posed by various adversaries. Russia, for instance, has displayed a troubling readiness to leverage nuclear threats as a tool of coercion, heightening the risk of escalation. At the same time, China is rapidly modernizing its nuclear arsenal, significantly expanding its capabilities and altering the global nuclear balance. North Korea, too, continues to expand its nuclear weapons program, posing a direct threat to regional stability and international security. Compounding these challenges is the growing collaboration between nuclear-armed states, which raises concerns about coordinated strategies that could undermine global deterrence systems. Adding to the complexity is the emerging risk of space-based nuclear threats. The deployment or use of nuclear weapons in space would result in catastrophic and indiscriminate effects, disrupting the infrastructure that underpins modern life. Communications, navigation, and surveillance systems, all heavily reliant on space-based technology, would be crippled, causing widespread chaos. The financial repercussions of such an event are staggering, with direct damages estimated at $500 billion and the broader economic impact potentially exceeding $3 trillion. These figures underscore the far-reaching consequences of even a single nuclear incident in space, making preventing such scenarios an urgent priority for the international community. As these threats evolve, the global landscape for nuclear arms control is becoming increasingly fragile. Traditional frameworks designed to limit the size and scope of nuclear arsenals are eroding, and recent developments suggest that these constraints could vanish altogether. The collapse of arms control agreements would likely spark a new arms race, with nations racing to expand and modernize their arsenals in an environment of unchecked competition. This prospect is particularly alarming in light of the growing alignment among nuclear-armed states, which could accelerate the breakdown of strategic stability. The international community now faces an immense challenge: how to prevent further nuclear proliferation while preserving the delicate balance that deters large-scale conflict. As nuclear threats multiply and arms control frameworks weaken, the risk of miscalculation or deliberate use of nuclear weapons grows, creating an increasingly volatile and uncertain future. Addressing this crisis will require coordinated global action, a renewed commitment to arms control, and innovative solutions to manage the emerging threats posed by technological advancements and shifting alliances. The strategic partnership between China and Russia has reached a pivotal moment as both nations navigate a rapidly shifting and increasingly complex international landscape. Their relationship, while robust and bordering on an alliance, is defined more by pragmatic mutual benefit than by ideological unity. This dynamic underscores a partnership that is functional rather than deeply aligned, driven by shared interests rather than common values. At its core, the China-Russia partnership is characterized by a high degree of political flexibility and resilience, avoiding formal alliance commitments while maintaining strong cooperative ties. This flexibility allows both nations to collaborate on strategic priorities without being bound by rigid obligations. Their mutual support is evident in international forums and organizations, where they frequently align to counterbalance what they perceive as an overreach by Western-dominated powers. United in their opposition to the current international order, Beijing and Moscow present a coordinated front against policies and initiatives led by the United States and its allies. However, the relationship is marked by clear asymmetries, with China increasingly asserting itself as the senior partner. This power imbalance has shaped their interactions, particularly in economic and technological exchanges. Beijing has adeptly leveraged Russia's geopolitical isolation to secure favorable terms in trade, gaining access to discounted energy supplies and advanced military technology that bolster its own strategic goals. This transactional nature of the partnership underscores China's pragmatic approach, prioritizing its national interests while ensuring the relationship remains mutually advantageous. Economic interdependence between the two nations has reached unprecedented levels, with bilateral trade surging to $240 billion in 2023. This growth reflects not only the deepening ties between Beijing and Moscow, but also their shared need to mitigate economic pressures stemming from Western sanctions and trade restrictions. Yet, this interdependence also highlights the underlying motivations of their partnership, a calculated effort to strengthen their positions in a world increasingly divided by geopolitical rivalries. As China and Russia continue to collaborate, their partnership remains a strategic tool for both nations, shaped by the pressures of the international system rather than an inherent ideological bond. The evolving nature of this relationship will likely have far-reaching implications, influencing global power dynamics and challenging the established order in the years to come. The economic relationship between China and Russia has undergone a significant transformation since the Ukraine conflict began. Chinese companies have filled the void left by Western businesses, with Chinese automobiles now accounting for 60% of new car sales in Russia. However, this economic partnership shows clear asymmetries. Trade dynamics between China and Russia reveal stark contrasts. Russia depends on China for 26% of its total trade, and China's trade with Russia represents only 3% of its global trade volume. Despite these imbalances, energy cooperation remains the backbone of their economic relationship. However, Chinese investors have shown increasing caution, with no new large-scale investment projects launched since the start of Russia's invasion of Ukraine. Military cooperation between China and Russia has intensified, though it falls short of formal alliance commitments. Recent developments include increased frequency and complexity of joint military exercises, enhanced coordination in maritime and air patrols, expanded technology sharing and defense industry cooperation, and joint development of missile warning systems. Since 1990, Russia has provided China with military equipment valued at $38.5 billion, accounting for 77% of China's total arms imports during this period. However, this relationship is evolving as China's domestic defense industry advances. The future trajectory of military collaboration faces several constraints. While both nations conduct regular joint exercises, their militaries lack significant interoperability. China has maintained strategic autonomy in its support for Russia's military efforts, carefully avoiding direct military aid that might trigger Western sanctions. Looking ahead, the relationship appears poised to continue its pragmatic evolution. Beijing's support for Moscow remains calculated and conditional, driven by strategic interests rather than ideological alignment. China's leadership has demonstrated a willingness to leverage its position as Russia's primary economic partner while maintaining strategic flexibility. The partnership's future development will likely be shaped by several key factors, including Western responses to their cooperation, the outcome of the Ukraine conflict, and China's broader strategic calculations in the Indo-Pacific region. As both nations seek to challenge U.S. global influence, their cooperation may deepen in specific areas while maintaining careful limitations to avoid confrontation with Western powers. The international community's response to China's warning against Russian nuclear threats has created a complex web of diplomatic reactions, revealing deep divisions in global perspectives. U.S. officials have expressed measured relief that China appears to be heeding concerns about Russia's nuclear posturing, particularly at a pivotal moment in global security dynamics. Western nations have adopted a measured and deliberate approach in responding to China's stance on Russia's war efforts, balancing criticism with cautious acknowledgement of Beijing's actions. The U.S. State Department has noted that China has refrained from providing direct military support to Russia, a distinction that reflects a nuanced understanding of Beijing's position in the conflict. The Biden administration has taken careful account of China's abstentions on United Nations resolutions condemning Russia, recognizing these as subtle but meaningful signals of restraint. At the same time, U.S. officials remain vigilant, closely monitoring any signs of potential sanctions evasion that could bolster Russia's war capabilities. This vigilance is coupled with an understanding of China's capacity to influence broader dynamics, particularly its potential role in preventing nuclear escalation, an area where Beijing's engagement is seen as critical to global stability. Despite these acknowledgments, the U.S. continues to apply diplomatic pressure on China, particularly in the context of military technology transfers that could alter the balance of the conflict. Secretary of State Antony Blinken has underscored the significant reputational risk China faces as a close ally of Russia, emphasizing the potential consequences for Beijing's global standing. However, Western officials remain uneasy about China's steadfast refusal to condemn Russia's actions outright, viewing this as a troubling indication of Beijing's unwillingness to distance itself from Moscow. This delicate balancing act reflects the complexities of managing relations with China during a time of heightened geopolitical tensions. While the West seeks to hold Beijing accountable for its indirect support of Russia, it also recognizes the importance of maintaining open channels for dialogue to address critical global challenges, including the ongoing risks of escalation in the conflict. The United Nations Security Council has become an essential stage for diplomatic maneuvering, where voting patterns highlight the deep divisions within the international community. In a stark reflection of global sentiment, only 4 countries, Belarus, Eritrea, North Korea, and Syria, supported Russia in the UN vote demanding an immediate withdrawal from Ukraine, underscoring the extent of international opposition to Moscow's actions. The Security Council's permanent members have adopted divergent stances on the issue. China has maintained a position of strategic ambiguity, consistently calling for peace and diplomatic resolution, while refraining from direct condemnation of Russia. Russia, on the other hand, has exercised its veto power to block resolutions that seek to impose further penalties or demands for its withdrawal from Ukraine. Western powers, including the United States, have been pushing for stronger condemnation of Russia's actions, emphasizing the need for accountability and adherence to international law. Countries in the Global South have sought a more balanced approach, advocating for dialogue and negotiation without taking sides. These nations, often caught between the geopolitical rivalry of the West and the East, have called for a fairer and more inclusive international response. The United States, as a permanent member, has underscored the importance of upholding the core principles of the UN Charter, particularly those relating to territorial integrity and sovereignty. This aligns with Washington's broader strategy of isolating Russia diplomatically while reinforcing its commitment to international norms. In contrast, China's role as a permanent member has come under increasing scrutiny from Western diplomats. There is growing pressure on Beijing to leverage its significant influence more constructively, urging it to take a more active role in preventing nuclear escalation and promoting peace in the region. The divisions within the Security Council reflect not only differing national interests, but also the broader geopolitical tensions that define the current global order. As the conflict in Ukraine continues, the UN's ability to foster meaningful diplomacy and maintain unity will be tested, with each member's stance playing a pivotal role in shaping the future of international relations. The response of the Global South to the escalating nuclear tensions has been marked by complexity and nuance, with countries in this group adopting diverse stances influenced by a combination of economic dependencies, historical ties, regional security concerns, and development priorities. Many nations in the Global South have deep economic connections with both China and Russia, which shape their diplomatic positions and responses to the crisis. These economic relationships often lead to a careful balancing act, as these countries seek to maintain favorable ties with both powers without alienating others. In addition, historical relationships with major global powers, such as the United States and former colonial states, play a significant role in shaping their responses. Given their past experiences with foreign influence and intervention, some countries may be hesitant to align too closely with either the West or Russia. Regional security concerns also weigh heavily on the decision-making of Global South countries, as many are situated in volatile areas where tensions over territorial disputes or military conflicts could be exacerbated by broader geopolitical dynamics. As such, they may prioritize maintaining peace and stability within their regions, even if it means taking a more neutral or less vocal stance on the global stage. Furthermore, development priorities remain central to the Global South's approach, as many of these nations are focused on economic growth, infrastructure development, and social progress. The reactions from middle and great powers in the Global South have been particularly nuanced, with none joining the coordinated sanctions imposed by Western nations. India, Brazil, and South Africa, all significant democratic partners of the United States, have maintained studied and independent approaches to the conflict. At the G20 summit, India successfully brokered a consensus statement that addressed the Global South's concerns regarding the war's negative impact on food security, energy supplies, and macro-financial stability. This diplomatic achievement highlighted the growing influence of non-Western powers in shaping international responses to nuclear threats. The African continent's response has been particularly divided, with approximately half of African nations supporting UN resolutions condemning Russia's actions, while most others abstained. In Asia, only Japan and South Korea aligned with Western condemnation, while ASEAN nations maintained more measured positions. China's relationship with the Global South has become increasingly strategic, with Beijing potentially eclipsing Washington's half-century-old position as the most influential country in the G77 by 2040. This shifting dynamic has complicated international responses to nuclear threats, as many developing nations balance their relationships with both China and Western powers. The international response continues to evolve as nations navigate the complex interplay between economic interests, security concerns, and diplomatic alignments. Western nations maintain pressure through targeted sanctions and diplomatic isolation, while Global South countries increasingly assert independent positions that reflect their unique strategic calculations and development priorities. China's stern warning to Russia marks a defining moment in global nuclear diplomacy, signaling Beijing's growing unease with Moscow's nuclear rhetoric. This pivotal shift reflects China's careful balancing act between maintaining strategic partnerships and preventing nuclear escalation that could destabilize international security. What do you think about this issue? Please share your views in the comment section. Thanks for watching. Don't forget to subscribe to the channel to watch our next military analysis videos.